Yeah, you always need to check.
Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Toledo. On this July 30th, 2023, I am Judy Lee Troutman, today's service associate. Guest minister Terry Acox will lead the service today, and our music director, Jeffrey Maxey, will provide the music. Our lifelong learning director, Jenny Gottman, will present the story. We are a church of no doctrine or official creed. Instead, we covenant to support each other in our individual searches for truth and meaning. We welcome everyone, as the song said. If you are a visitor, you will notice in the pew racks in front of you a rainbow-colored card which shows our principles and our sources. And feel free to take that if you're visiting today, or if you've been a long-time member, would like to have it. There's also a yellow card that visitors can use to provide contact information, and it will allow us to introduce you to us and us to you. If you include your email address, we will send our weekly UU email with news of our various activities. And as you meet people today, feel free to introduce yourself and ask any questions that you may have. We also welcome those who are joining us virtually this morning.
On our hearts and minds today are members of our congregation who face health concerns or loss or financial concerns. There are some of you who may have seen on Facebook that Bonnie Olson has been in the hospital and is back home now. They are trying to identify the source of some seizures she's had. And we are helping as a congregation and provide food for them and other services in terms of visits. There are additional people, but I don't know if I have permission to talk about their particular stories, so just please keep them in mind. It's so helpful when we remember to let the caring circle know of any concerns, and for all of us to provide the care we can. We so often do not know what is going on for others throughout our lives. Choosing kindness first in our relationships is a gift to others and ourselves. Reverend Tim, who is on study time and vacation this month, but is still connected, posted on our Facebook group. Some of you might have seen the news that a Unitarian Universalist church in the Dallas suburb of Plano, Texas, was attacked with a firebomb overnight, Saturday to Sunday, July 22nd to 23rd. No one was injured, and the damage there was limited to the front door, the foyer, and just outside the entry. In late June, reports say, a hate group interrupted a Sunday service the Plano UUs were holding. Logic says that the burning was related. We hold that congregation in our hearts. We also hold in our hearts all who are touched by the recent demonstrations against the LGBTQ and Jewish communities here at home. Share the statements that you can of Equality Toledo and the Jewish Federation of Greater Toledo. Look for upcoming details on the Shine a Light on Hate conference scheduled for August 24th. Moving on from hate using power, let's use our power. Though churches may not legally endorse or disapprove specific political candidates, we can endorse or disapprove issues. First Unitarian has a large vote no on issue 1 on August 8th in our yard. This election was purposely scheduled at a time of likely low turnout, even though the legislature had previously ended August elections. It allows one county to overrule 87 counties, since it requires preparatory signatures from all 88 counties. Because it requires a 60% approval, the reality is that 41% of people voting no on an amendment overrule 59% voting yes. This ends majority rule and makes amending the Constitution extremely difficult, if not impossible. I was speaking to a proponent of the issue who, when asked for all of the reasons to support it, finally identified preventing a possibly successful potential upcoming amendment guaranteeing reproductive freedom. Early voting is occurring now. Please vote no.
Our opening words this morning are an excerpt from a letter from the Birmingham jail, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is a pretense of justice, who instantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with you in your method of direct action, who paternalistically feels that he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the myth of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait until a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection.
As Judy lights our chalice, we are Unitarian Universalists with minds that think, heads that love, and hands that are ready to serve. Together, we care for our earth and work for friendship and peace in the world. Please join me in reciting our covenant. The words can be found in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and love, and to help one another. Jeffrey.
Our opening hymn today is in the teal hymnal. Should we get that out? It is number 1029. It is Love Knocks and Waits for Us to Hear. And if you are so able and would like to stand and join us, we would appreciate that.
Can you hear me? It can be difficult to explain privilege to people, particularly people who don't want to understand it. Even saying the word privilege can sometimes cause people to roll their eyes and turn off their ears. So there is a science fiction writer, some of you may know of him. His name is John Scalzi, and he came up with a very cool and interesting analogy to explain privilege. He said that having straight white male privilege, as he does, is akin to playing a video game on its lowest difficulty setting. So what does that mean? Is there anybody here who plays video games? All right, people who play video games, can you tell me one difference between playing in easy mode versus playing on hard mode? Yes. Krista dies a lot more in hard mode. Why do you die so often in hard mode, Krista? The bad guys are much meaner. Anybody else? A difference between easy mode and hard mode? I asked my son this question because, go, Cindy.
Well, I have all the high scores in easy mode.
You get a much higher score in easy mode. Why is that?
Because I'm very capable on easy mode.
You're more capable of doing things on easy mode. You're just a tougher competitor. I asked my son this question and I got answers similar to these. He told me that in video games, you play a character and that character needs to do things like eat and sleep. And if you're playing in easy mode, you need less sleep and you need less food. And when you're playing on hard mode, your monsters or bad guys are much harder to kill. And so that is the video game difference between easy mode and hard mode. And tell me if I'm right about this. When you play video games, you can actually play against your real life friends, right? You sit side by side and play each other in the video game. Is it possible for you to be playing in easy mode and your friend to be playing in hard mode? Possibly, yeah. Is it, in that case, your friend who is playing in hard mode is going to have to spend more time looking for food or resting or healing or getting medicine while you are freer to try to accomplish the goals of the game? Is it possible for you, sitting there playing in easy mode, to lose to your friend who is sitting next to you playing in hard mode? Sure. A person playing the game in hard mode can beat you. Maybe they have better luck. Maybe they have a better skill at it than you do. The fact that your friend who is playing on hard mode wins doesn't change the fact that you are playing on easy mode. I don't really play video games like the kids do, but I do play some games on my phone, and one of those games is backgammon. And when I started playing this game, I played it on easy mode because that is pretty similar to playing against a person who is just learning the game like I was just learning the game. So my phone would make some stupid mistakes, or my phone would not seize on the stupid mistakes I made. And that was a good way to learn the game. It was a lot less challenging. Now I play backgammon on medium mode. I have played it on hard mode, and I don't enjoy it. And it's not just because you're playing against a very skilled opponent. I would enjoy playing against a very skilled opponent. The problem with this hard mode is that my rolls of the dice are not random. I frequently roll numbers that force me to make myself vulnerable to attack. And the computer always attacks. And my opponent, their roll of the dice is not random either. They get friendly dice rolls that cause them to attack me. And this is a game that I, a lot of the time, just literally can't win. That is not a fun game to play, and I choose not to. Of course, in real life, you don't get to choose your difficulty settings. You don't get to choose the circumstances you were born into. Things like the color of your skin, the education level of your parents, the laws of the country where you're born. We don't get to choose those things. And no one is asking us to apologize for the set of circumstances that we were born into. That is not something we could control. What would be fair and what would be a recognition of privilege is for us to realize and internalize that no matter how skilled at this game we might be, we are still playing on easy mode. Thank you.
For our centering, can you hear me? For our centering music today, we are going to sing number 519, Lift Every Voice, and it's going to not be a solo today, it's going to be all of us, because it's every voice. So if you're able to stand and sing Lift Every Voice and sing with us, that would be
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise, high as those listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Sing the rising sun of the living God. Let us march on to be plentiful. Rolling shore, leisure the chasing on, to the days when home and die, and with a steady aim, and on our weary feet, come to the place where our Father's side. Have come over a way that with tears has been washed. We have come treading our path with the bloodless sword. From the gloomy past to the stand at last, where the white gleam of our star is fast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far away, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Our feet stray from the places, our God, where we meet thee. Bless our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. And beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. For our meditation, contemplation, and prayer, this is about Lift Every Voice and Sing. The Smith College site, The Body is Memory, an exhibition of Black women artists, presents 9 exhibits curated by Smith College students enrolled in the course Introduction to Black Culture.
This is some of its description of Lift Every Voice and Sing. Lift Every Voice and Sing was written as a poem by NAACP leader James Weldon Johnson, and then converted into a song by his brother, John Rosamond Johnson, in 1899. It was performed for the first time in Jacksonville, Florida, by 500 school children in celebration of President Abraham Lincoln's birthday on February 12, 1900. The song was then adapted by the NAACP in 1919 as its official Black national anthem. Today, the anthem is recited at gatherings to celebrate excellence, community, and Black pride. During her Coachella performance in 2018, Beyoncé paid homage to the song by singing a few lines in front of her audience. As the first Black woman to headline the Coachella Music Festival in California, this was both a historic and political moment for the Black community. Embedded within its lyrics are stories of triumph, struggle, and freedom that resonate deeply for African Americans, especially during the Reconstruction and Civil Rights era. The lyrics of Lift Every Voice and Sing serves as a reminder for Black Americans that each generation has had to lift their voices along with those within their community to demand and protect their human rights. Please join me in a moment of silence.
Our reading this morning is an excerpt from The Dangers of Perfectionism, Andrea Brandt, PhD, MFT in Psychology Today. So what's wrong with perfectionism, you ask? Being perfect is impossible. No one is perfect. When you're always striving to be perfect and forever coming up short, you are at risk of a whole host of issues. You also miss out on opportunities to learn from your mistakes. Unrealistic expectations from the core of perfectionism. When our expectations are unmet, we feel angry. This is true for expectations both big and small. Perfectionists also expect other people to be perfect and get angry or impatient when others prove imperfect. Perfectionism can drive ourselves to unrealistic goals and expectations, and also to procrastination. For instance, I'd like to write a novel. It's a fantastic goal. When you need to be perfect and you're afraid that you're not, you won't. I missed an important line. It's a fantastic goal to write a novel. I must finish a novel by the end of the year is a perfectionist goal. And when you need to be perfect and you're afraid that you're not, you won't start projects you're scared might not succeed. When you're hyper-focused on getting everything right and berating yourself when you don't, you lose out on the wisdom that comes from examining why you made the mistakes you did. But mistakes are good. If we never made mistakes, we'd never learn. The antidote to perfectionism is self-forgiveness. To forgive yourself, you must let go of perfectionism and adopt a different view and belief and about yourself, that life is for learning and true perfection lies in always working to improve yourself, not avoiding mistakes. There is no such thing as being perfect, but you can still seek excellence. When you strive for perfection, all you'll see is flaws. Hating yourself or berating yourself for not being perfect doesn't help you. If you don't work mindfully through your feelings and move to self-forgiveness, you'll stay trapped in your anger, shame, guilt, sadness, and other negative thoughts and emotions. Self-forgiveness is a tool not just for anger, but for all uncomfortable feelings. Moving from a perfectionist to a self-forgiveness mindset may require some lifestyle changes too. When you get frustrated with your partner, child, friend, etc., for breaking a promise or not meeting your every need, you need to remember that they're imperfect just like you, and that's okay. As you practice self-forgiveness, practice forgiving others too.
Friends, thank you for coming today to a sermon topic that is, I believe, the longest that I've ever seen, and that probably scared away at least half the congregation, and also a topic that is often uncomfortable for us to address. So thank you for your presence today. So, what is the UUA Black Empowerment controversy? What does perfectionism have to do with it? Let's start with the simpler one. Perfectionism requires one to be right in order to be perfect. Throughout the controversy were many people confident that they were right, that their view was the correct one. It prevents the self-forgiveness that allows us to look more openly at ourselves and what is happening. I studied with a teacher of family therapy for years. It was wonderful. I went to a training eager to show my video of helping my client visualize her difficult emotions as crows landing on her shoulder that she could shoo away. But no. He quickly said, shaking his head, "Oh no, the lesson is to stroke the crows and say, I know what you are. I know what you are." And in that moment, he changed the negative symbolism of crows to a positive one of personal power and transformation for my client. I practice self-forgiveness, sometimes with discomfort, sometimes with a good laugh at myself, but I need to practice self-forgiveness. I have another teacher, Lynn Lyle, gave a spiritual forum titled, "Are You Sure?" revealing the wisdom of her teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, who said, "Are you sure of your perceptions? This question is addressed to you." The Black empowerment controversy is about the period between 1967 and 1970, with long-lasting effects for years after. Why go back to that time to learn and understand what happened then? Because it still reverberates in the 50-plus years since. You may see on the screen the book, The Arc of the Universe is Long. It is a 2009 edition about the work toward racial justice, primarily since the time of the controversy until the publication. James Cone said, "There is no justice without memory." No justice without memory. That makes me think of today's culture wars and the trending misrepresentation and erasing of history. Our society continues to struggle for racial justice. Our institutions and ourselves are involved in the struggle. As Reverend Dr. Mark Morrison Reed writes, "We do not stand above the social attitudes of our times, as we are prone to believe, but rather flounder about in their midst with everyone else." I am 74. Stroking. I remember the 60s and 70s very well, and I suspect many of you do too. Many memories returned as I began reading about the empowerment controversy, the intensity of the time, the arguments about tactics, the emergence of Black power, focusing on Black people deciding on what was best for them, and the development of their own power to then equally interact with white people and their power. There was so much fear for so many, so much anger, so much optimism for many others, and the deep awareness of most people of being in a transformative time. Reverend Dr. William Barber refers to that civil rights movement as the Second Reconstruction. He refers to our current times as the Third Reconstruction. Again, there is so much fear, anger, optimism, and the deep awareness of the discomfort of being in a transformative time. I decided to learn more about the controversy when I heard differing views about it during a spiritual forum. Differing views is the consistent theme throughout the controversy. What was missing was a resolution of those differences, which led to a split that remained unhealed. On the screen, you may see the book, Unitarian Universalism and the Quest for Racial Justice. It is the 1983 study by the Commission of Appraisal of the Controversy. It is dense, packed with details, names, abbreviations, and it's very informative. It is the first UUA attempt to thoroughly review what happened. It made a recommendation that the that the 1984 UUA General Assembly request the UUA board, so General Assembly asked the board to propose to the General Assembly, because that's the way we're organized, the General Assembly to the board and then back to the General Assembly. They asked it to recommend to the General Assembly the formation of a new body with appropriate staff and funding to begin a fresh response to the issues of racism as a major priority of the UUA. So that was in 1983, after there was a diminishment in the denomination of addressing racial issues since mid-70s. So it took 8 years, 10 years. In 1963, Viola Liuzzo was killed in Alabama. You've heard of her. In 1965, Reverend Orloff Miller and Reverend Clark Olson were attacked in Selma but survived. Their companion, Reverend James Reeb, died. The UU board was meeting at the time of Reverend Reeb's death. They adjourned their meeting and resumed their meeting in Selma. They also marched. The courage and commitment of the board and other UUs, including the Selma Church, brought many new members to the denomination, including Black people. An emergency conference was called in October 1967 to, quote, take some leadership after the burning of our cities, unquote. 112 participants from various staff, cities, districts, ecumenical observers, and Black theological students were chosen in a balanced manner. A total of 125 was expected, 135 actually attended. 30 of the 37 Black people attending withdrew from the general meeting and became the core of the Black Unitarian Universalist Caucus. They presented a list of non-negotiable demands for the emergency conference to either accept or reject. A Black Affairs Council was to be established, whose membership would be selected by the caucus, which would be funded for 4 years at $250,000 per year, and would be completely independent in the use of its money. The emergency conference endorsed them. The demands were then sent to the board. This was the opening of the empowerment controversy. Conflict began. The report does a good job of reporting the various views of the people on all sides of the controversy. Good people, good intentions, convinced that they were right, painful and harmful outcome. The November board meeting refused to address the specific demands of the caucus. No Black Affairs Council was to be formed. Instead, and this will be familiar to you who know about committees and UUism, instead, they chose to reorganize the Commission on Religion and Race, inviting the caucus to assist in the development of the most important and feasible implications of the emergency conference. The president acknowledged that racism is a white, not a Black problem, but, quote, we have long advocated an integrated society. It is the temper of our board that we should not today honor or give funds to any group which organized on purely racial lines. Although their policies are perhaps understandable, we understand, but do not concur, unquote. However, the caucus's recommendation that Black people be added to leadership was not acted upon. The traditional UUA history was to advocate for integration as the means and the end. The caucus advocated the empowerment of Black people as the means to the end of integration. The underlying power dynamic of the white denomination and leadership revealed to them that there would not be significant integration traveling the same path that Black members and ministers had followed through Unitarian and Universalist history. Ironically, sadly, it was the UU commitment to racial justice evidenced in the 60s by the board, individuals, and some of the churches that led Black members to believe that the UUA was the best religious home to advance their goal of Black empowerment and eventual true integration. Next followed UUA committee reports, critical of the caucus and what was viewed as separatism and racism rather than empowerment. In March 1968, the board rejected supporting the caucus-backed council resolution on the agenda for the May General Assembly in Cleveland. They developed other financial options, but those kept changing as the board continued to meet. Their process of resistance to the council and the caucus frequently continued through the controversy, but sometimes alternated with support. There are too many details to include in a 20-minute sermon. If you're interested in those details, and they are fascinating and revealing, I recommend the book of the report of the Commission on Appraisal. Meanwhile, a group formed opposing the caucus and council, BAWA, Black and White Action. It grew in a church that successfully integrated racially and opposed the concept of Black empowerment. They firmly believed in integration as the means and the end, and they fought the caucus and council. Toledo, our church, as mentioned, is supportive of BAWA. Another important group formed in April 1968, Fullback, which was an abbreviation for Full Funding for the Black Affairs Council. This was a group of white supporters of the council and caucus. They saw their role as a support to the caucus and council and endorsed their view of empowerment. So the UUA experienced the change tactics used in the larger society: integration advocates, Black power advocates, white advocates of Black power. At the Cleveland General Assembly, advocates for each position competed for support from the delegates for 2 days. On the third day of tension and high emotion, remember, those of you who, like me, were there in the 60s and 70s, the General Assembly voted 836, that's 836 to 327, in favor of the board was to recognize and fund the council. The council was to be granted affiliate status like the Layman's League. The council was to be provided $250,000 a year for 4 years. BAWA did not receive funding. That was the first year. After intense interactions between BAWA and supporters of the council, the 1969 Boston General Assembly confirmed and continued the funding for the council. 2 General Assemblies voted to fully financially support the council. However, months later, in November 1969, the board reduced council funding to $200,000 with a promise that the first $50,000 that the annual fund raised to exceed its goal would go to the council. And then the allotted total funds would be spread to a 5-year timeline instead of the approved 4 years. The board was facing a financial crisis caused by the drawdown of restricted funds that they had done, but those restricted funds could no longer be tapped. Other options to cutting the council were not discussed in the report. The $50,000 reduction was appealed in January, but the appeal was denied. The caucus chose to disaffiliate with the UUA, which freed them from their agreement to not fundraise on their own, which BAWA was already doing. The board no longer needed to fund the council through its budget. That was a symbolic end to the controversy, although involvement and conflict continued for several more years. At the 1971 Washington, D.C. General Assembly, supporters of the caucus and council prepared alternative budget options for consideration that would balance the budget and fully fund the council. However, the alternative was never explored completely because the Ross motion passed, which formed one racial justice fund to end division and polarization. There was no guarantee of prompt continued funding for the programs council was already supporting. The caucus and council also did not want to turn over their highly successful fundraising efforts to the UUSC. A third problem was the vague wording of the motion, which included nothing about a Black role in decision-making. The Commission on Appraisal's assessment is that the Ross motion prevented the reconciliation of the caucus to the denomination. Reverend William Sinkford was among the people leaving the church over the controversy. He later returned and became our first Black UUA president. He wrote in 2003, "Why do we use the term Black empowerment controversy? It seems to make the anguish of that period the fault of the relatively small group of African American Unitarian Universalists rather than the result of the white Unitarian Universalist encounter with race and racism." The term white power controversy would be more accurate in many ways and would direct attention to the broad Unitarian Universalist movement and its need for healing and transformation. So, how did we do in comparison to other denominations? Well, not so well as I hoped. The report contrasts several denominations with ours specifically. Although there have been outstanding leaders and individuals, the denomination at the time of the report, 1983, was, quote, not on the cutting edge. Happily, the book, The Arc of the Universe is Long, from 2009, supports that we were doing better than in 1983. Some conclusions from the report include institutional and individual racism have created problems for Black UU ministers. That's one. Most of whom have left the denomination and or the ministry, disillusioned by the, quote, abominable way the denomination has treated them, unquote. A major effort, number two, a major effort should have been made in 1967 to involve caucus leadership in denominational responsibilities. But paternalism was, by and large, the mindset of institutional leaders. Both the caucus and BAWA offered a way for whites to be involved in collaborative ways in programs for racial justice. The inability of the institution to accommodate both the council, caucus, and BAWA was fatal to effective action. Whatever number this is, 3 or 4. The caucus and council did account to the denomination with audited and certified financial reports. But because those reports were not communicated to the denomination as a whole by official channels, enormous misunderstanding occurred. A significant number of Blacks were alienated by the failure to deal constructively with empowerment, as well as others who felt an unwillingness on the part of the denomination to deal with their desire to work in partnership with whites. In truth, their final comment, in truth, the UUA as an institution seems incapable of effective response to social justice issues when there is not substantial agreement. A separate writer's estimate is that 1,000 Black people left the denomination. So I wonder if we handle conflict better now. One of the complaints during the controversy was that people were hard to deal with. They had personalities. Serving with Grace describes doing the spiritual work of dealing with personalities as a part of leadership. I think it is part of the spiritual work that is not confined to leadership. Do we allow healthy conflict? Do we avoid conflict because of the divisiveness of the controversy? Or are we conflict avoidant as a group? There was an audit on racism completed by an outside agency before the publication of the book. Among the findings were that we, as a denomination, I'm smiling, tend to talk and philosophize, have proper procedures, and delay action. Does this seem familiar? It did to me. Everybody has an opinion, right? Another finding was that we were a very white and middle-class denomination. The middle-class notation is particularly interesting and less commonly described. How do middle-class values affect our functioning? Does it fit with our proper procedures? What are the other ways it affects us? Was that the factor behind a religious committee asking if standards would need to be lowered for Black ministers to enter the denomination? Or was that racism? Or was it both? If class is a barrier to diversity that the audit noted, what shall we do to address it? How can we connect? So, my learning leads to more questions. I'll stroke my crows as I ponder the imperfection of the UUA. I'll stroke my crows as I ponder my imperfections. I'll practice self-forgiveness so I can put my faith in practice and not just talk, philosophize. May it be so.
Thank you, Terry, for that very thought-provoking sermon. And now, please watch a video that will explain one of our special offerings today.
Plano Fire Rescue says Sunday around 12:15 a.m., someone saw flames coming from the Community Unitarian Universalist Church off East Parker Road in Plano. When firefighters got there, they found fire at the front door and on the ground outside the door. Crews quickly extinguished the fire and no one was injured. Church leaders posted to Facebook calling the incident a, quote, firebomb attack. The post reads in part, quote, an incendiary device with a chemical accelerant was thrown or placed at the front doors of the main church building. Plano Fire Rescue confirms the fire was set intentionally, but they did not share what started the fire. Church leaders added in the post that the church has been working with police since June 25th, after an incident happened with a hate group intruding on worship services. Plano Fire Rescue did not share any information on a potential suspect or suspects, only that this is a criminal investigation. Fox 4 reached out to the Texas Unitarian Universalist Justice Ministry. They declined our request for an interview, but shared a statement asking for support and prayers for the church in light of, quote, such hate and violence. Despite damage to the front of the church building, Sunday morning worship services went on as normal, while Plano police provided extra security. Plano Fire Rescue told us the fire marshal is looking at surveillance video of streets and nearby buildings to see if they caught anything. In the church's post, it says that the damage is limited to the front doors, materials directly outside the front doors, and the entrance foyer.
Our church board unanimously voted a special offering in support of the Plano, Georgia Unitarian Universalist Church that was firebombed this last weekend. All contributions today that are not dedicated to pledges will go to the Plano congregation. So if you wish to contribute, make your check to our church, designate clearly Plano in the memo line. And then for all of our giving, you may give by going to uutoledo.org, click on Give, and then click on Online Giving. And we have added something new to our ways of giving. Note the QR code in the center of this slide, and then a larger version of it now. QR means quick response, and I will pause now to give you a moment so that you can aim your smartphone to the QR code, and you can do that now. Or you can always mail a check to 3205 Glendale Avenue, Toledo, Ohio, 43614. Or you can always drop your offering in the basket in the foyer, and you will find in your pews an envelope, which is white, that you can use to put in your donation. And then do remember to mark in the memo line that it's for your pledge or it's for Plano. And we thank you for your contributions.
of a lonely sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. No religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you will join us, and the world would be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of men. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you will join us, and the world would live as one. And the world would live as one, yeah. And the world would live as one.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Coming soon, the 9:45 a.m. Sunday, August 6th, we have our Summer Chill Out series. Please join our adult discussion group for coffee and conversation. In lieu of planned content, we will spend the hour chatting, meeting new people, and strengthening our connections with each other. All are welcome. Next week's sermon will be Road Trips Pilgrimage, presented by returning from vacation our senior minister, Reverend Dr. T.K. Barger. Reverend Tim tells us that the 11 a.m. Sunday services in August will all be on the same theme of road trips, each week covering a different aspect of why a person might take a journey as a pilgrimage, for adventure, diversion from routine, and a way to celebrate with a traveling party. Then, on September 3rd, we'll end the trip by coming home. For the beginning of our 2023-24 church year, our ingathering will be on September 10th with a water ceremony. As Krista told you last week, your pets are invited to come to church, as we'll have the return of the animal blessing on October 1st.
Announcements for the upcoming week are noted in the calendar of today's order of service, as well as in the FYI. Immediately after our service today, there will be coffee in Fellowship Hall and social time down the hall and to your left. Visitors especially come and be a part of our community. And then at 12:30, volunteers will gather to begin planning for the upcoming rummage sale, which is in support of this church. Now for our closing words, Brene Brown defines connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. Today, may we commit to connect with each other. Today, may we commit to connect with others who are familiar to us. Today, may we commit to connect with others who are not familiar to us. Today, may we commit to grow our circles of connection wider and wider to fill our lives with the joy of justice and love.
As Judy extinguishes our flame, it's up to us. It's up to us to carry the flame within us. It's up to us to share our commitment to justice. It's up to us to share our commitment to love. It's up to us to support each other on the journey. May it be so.
And our closing hymn is number 1023 in the teal hymnal. It's Building Bridges.
Between our visions, I reach out to you, and you reach out to me, with all our voices and all our visions, friends we could make such sweet harmony.
Go in peace today.
Yes. Yes.
So the baseball game tonight, and trying to make it more part of it. A as an F. Remember that? I might not be able to stay for the whole thing because I have a birthday party to go to, but I will split the difference. Hey, can I say things like hey, better, swing, or no, this round? I'm really cool. It's the new age, it's not the 70s when we were all cut, obviously. Yes, I love that.